Today we're going to discuss the points changes of the Unforgiven, what went up, what went down, and what will be good in 9th. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. We've been looking at the points costs from chapter approved over the last few days, and today we've reached the Dark Angels, so we're going to see how they're going to be shaping up in the new edition of 40k. I've covered the vast majority of the Space Marine units in previous videos, so today we're going to be focusing on the Dark Angels unique options. As per normal, we'll take each unit in turn, look at how many points it's gone up or down, but more importantly focus on the percentage change, which is probably the most relevant thing here. Most things went up between 10 to 15%, so if things went up by less than that, then it's a relative buff, and if they went up by more, then it might be a relative nerf to the unit. We'll start off by looking at the Ravenwing units, then go on to the Deathwing, any other special characters, and round off by looking at some plasma weapons. Let's jump straight into it. So in general, the Ravenwing have been pretty decent beneficiaries of the rules changes going into 9th edition. Bikes and vehicles can move and fire with heavy weapons, which is the biggest thing, particularly for their land speeders and aircraft. The land speeders might have lost in a few ways though, just because if they are tagged in close combat, they can't just happily fall back and shoot now. They'd have to stay in close combat to fire, or just run away. Accordingly, some of the Ravenwing units have seen slight points increases. Black Knights have gone up from 34 to 40, very slightly worse than average. They are really quite glass cannons now, I think, good for damage dealing and unit synergy, but this hasn't done them enormous favours. The Landspeeder Dark Shroud, on the other hand, has actually gone down in points once you take into account its gear. Despite heavy bolters going up in points from 10 to 15 on vehicles, it's now only 135 points overall to field it this way. And with the changes to heavy bolters and assault cannons, I now think it could be worth shelling out the extra 5 points for the assault cannon. Bear in mind that modifiers have hurt this guy a little bit. If he's flying around next to your planes, then they won't get any additional -1 to hit for being next to him, but it does have the advantage of being able to protect them while they're in hover mode, and of course it's great for other land speeders and bikes. On the whole though, going down in points where almost everything else went up is really a good thing. -1 to hit is still great, and is far more usable than before. The Landspeeder Vengeance has gained the Blast Special rule on its enormous weapons, but overall has seen a bit of a points bump if you are taking it with the heavy bolter. If you're taking it with the assault cannon already, then it wasn't quite as bad. Being able to fire on the move is pretty massive for this thing. It does make it far more mobile and able to actually react to enemy threats, rather than suffering the -1 to moving and shooting. But still, losing fall back and shoot from fly isn't the best either. On the whole, I'd argue that this guy hasn't massively gained or lost either way by the points cost, maybe slightly worse than before. The Nephilim Jetfighter and Dark Talon both have increased in cost a bit, again kind of to be expected seeing as they're not suffering -1s to hit for moving and shooting with heavy weapons now. Nephilim's are up to 175 with the las cannons, or 170 if you took the Avenger cannon, and Dark Talons are now a whopping 215. I think despite these increases, they are still both usable. The changes in 9th edition have seen them gain significantly extra firepower, and bear in mind that most things did go up 10 to 15% anyway. Also, the Dark Talon did gain the Blast Special rule on that Rift cannon, which could be helpful against elite infantry. On the whole though, this certainly isn't a buff for those guys. Standard Ravenwing bikes, on the other hand, didn't go up anywhere near as much, only gaining 2 points to 25. I'd say they're more usable than previous, although I'm sure they'll be competing somewhat with the new Primaris Outriders when they do get folded into the Ravenwing. The Ravenwing Ancient Apothecary and Champion went up small amounts of points as well, nothing particularly crazy here. Bear in mind that characters are a little bit easier to shoot than they previously were. Talon Masters and Samael and Sableclaw have both been treated fairly well by the points cost changes. Ravenwing Talon Masters have gone down by 8 points to 180, which is a really quite significant buff really. These guys could be really frustrating to deal with before, and they're really not bad firepower point for point, once you've taken into account all of their rerolls. They have gained moving and shooting without taking the heavy weapon penalty, but bear in mind that if they do get locked up, then if you fall back then you won't be able to shoot. The character targeting keywords as well do make them a little bit harder to deal with than previously. Rules as written, they do sort of provide a degree of protection to each other, provided you have other Dark Angels units in the way, but I would expect that to be patched in the future, and they will generally have to be hanging around next to other vehicles or large infantry units if you do want to use their character protection. Still though, they're already very good firepower, getting even more accurate on the move, and also getting a relative points decrease is no bad thing whatsoever. I certainly expect to see plenty of these guys cropping up in Dark Angels lists in the future. Finally, if you're not taking Sableclaw, then Corvex has remained the exact same points cost, so certainly a relative buff, although in my experience most people tended to want to shell out for Sableclaw. Again though, if you aren't running the Landspeeder, then he's certainly a better choice than he was previously. Overall for the Ravenwing, Dark Shrouds, Talon Masters and Samael and Sableclaw are all looking great. Standard Ravenwing bikes are a bit better, and of the things that went up, I think they're all still very usable in 9th. Moving on to the Deathwing now. I'm sad to say that the Deathwing Knights have been increased in points cost by quite a lot. They've gone up from 35 points to 45 points, so a whopping 28% points increase there. The points cost change does make me wonder whether or not they were really meant to be 35 points previously. I'm certainly not saying that they were overpowered or anything, but they just didn't balance very well compared with Thunderhammer and Stormshield Terminators and other codexes. Now, rather unfortunately, they really don't compare all that well compared with Thunderhammer and Stormshield Terminators just from the standard Deathwing. These guys only went up 1 point, and now of the two they do seem to be the best all-round solid melee beatstick of the Deathwing. Standard Deathwing Terminators didn't get by too badly in the points increases as well. With Power Fists and Stormbolters, they're now 36 points, a relative buff points-wise compared with other things that went up. The Deathwing Ancient caught a fair bit of flack, jumping up 12 points to 88, where the other two remain relatively unscathed, but still not the strongest to be honest. In general though, if you're wanting to run Deathwing, then the standard Space Marine Terminators do seem to be the way to go compared with the Knights now, I think. Now if we look at the other characters that we haven't talked about so far, in general nothing went up too much. Asmodai is up 5 to 115, Azrael's up 10 to 160, Ezekiel's up to 115, Master Lazarus is 110. Would have been nice to see him get a bit more of a buff to be honest, he isn't all that strong compared with some of the other new Primaris characters. And Belial has remained stable at 125. In general, characters in the game don't seem to have gone up as much in points cost compared with others, probably due to those new character targeting rules. On the whole, they're pretty similar to before, to be honest. If you took them previously, then you still would now, and Belial might be looking very slightly better comparatively. The Interrogator Chaplain, both on Footing and Terminator armour, is fairly similar, but sadly the Jump Pack Interrogator Chaplain has gone up by quite a lot. He's now all the way up to 110 points if you do want that mobility, which is kind of a shame really, as that was the version that I'd be most tempted to run. Jump packs are just very efficient at getting Chaplain buffs where they need to be. Finally, I thought it was just worth mentioning the Dark Angel's Plasma Arsenal. Rerolling ones when they're stationary is great with Plasma, as is Weapons of the Dark Age for flat 3 damage. Fortunately for the Unforgiven, some of the main staples of plasma weapons in the Space Marine Codex have got relatively better compared with the rest. Hellblasters are absolutely unchanged, remaining stable at 33 points, so again looking far stronger compared with all the other things that went up. Plasma Inceptors again lost being able to fall back and shoot, but they're so much cheaper than they were before now. They've gone down to only 50 points per model, that's 9 less than previously, and their Plasma Exterminators got the blast keyword as well, meaning that if you wanted to get maximum plasma in a unit, 6 of these guys would now only cost you 300 points, all ready to drop in and just delete one enemy target. With the blast rules, whenever they take aim at a unit that's got 6 or more in it as well, they'd be getting automatic 3 shots out of each Exterminator, which will be 36 plasma shots out of the whole unit. Very scary indeed. Finally, Devastators with plasma cannons really haven't done too badly either. If we took a full unit of 5 of them with an Armorium Cherub and 4 plasma cannons, then they've only gone up to 140 points, another very small increase, and again plasma cannons got a very handy buff, acquiring the blast keyword when they were already fairly efficient firepower already. Definitely a very glass hammer type unit, but it really does seem that Dark Angels are kind of spoiled for choice with deliveries for mass plasma damage now. So overall, a bit of a mixed bag for the Dark Angels, certainly some good changes. Talon Masters, Dark Shrouds, Deathwing Terminators and Plasma Weapons have all done very well for themselves. Sadly, Deathwing Knights have taken a bit of a hit, and some of the other Ravenwing options have gone up a little bit, although they have gained some decent abilities in return. I'll certainly be looking on with interest to see what sort of Dark Angels lists people come up with in the new edition. If you've got any other thoughts on any potential strategies or implications of these new rules, please let me know down in the comments below, and please feel free to correct me if I've missed anything or made any errors. There were a lot of numbers to crunch in this video. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe. We'll have a fair few more points change reviews coming, as well as plenty of other strategy talk on the way into 9th edition. If you'd like to help the channel out, I'd just like to mention that I do have an Element Games affiliate link, which is down in the video description below. If you were thinking about picking up any Dark Angels or any other 40k in the near future, Element Games is a discount retailer in the UK, giving 10 to 20% off 40k miniatures. If you order in some models after clicking the link in the video description below, then a small amount of the money goes to support Auspex Tactics, and it doesn't cost you any more whatsoever at time of purchase, so it can just be a bit of a way to support the channel on things that you were already planning to buy. I do have a very similar link for Amazon in the USA and Canada. Again, if you click on the link and make an order, whether it's Warhammer or anything else on Amazon, a small amount goes to help support the channel and doesn't cost you any more. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.